Good morning, everybody. Jimmy wasn't kidding. It's kind of chilly here today. Usually we have more people, but now I can understand the temperature's down. Anyway, our weekly program, Jimmy reviewed with you, is as follows. We have a Wednesday Creative Living series that's being facilitated by Solomon Wells. It's quite good. I don't know what the topic is this week. Maybe Jimmy will tell us as the service winds down today. We also have a new membership program and or a renewal of a present membership. We do it annually, so get in touch with us if you're interested. Today I'm going to be going over some of the ideas that I think are often missed or misunderstood from chapter 2 of the textbook. And before I say that, let me start out by saying each of us here are on an extended, each of us here on our extended broadcast and gathering are living our one sacred, incredible life. And that's a fact, whether we realize it or not. It's something to think about. Your thoughts are creative. Your beliefs, your thoughts, your consciousness. Our study is about, if we really put it to practice, is about having the ability to transform. There's some people who study the teaching superficially and they make affirmations, and that's certainly good, but we have the ability in this teaching to transform ourselves entirely. Our study and our practice allows us, each of us individually, to move up and out of where we have been in our consciousness to a greater place. We get to move from where we have lived for a long time in consciousness with a lot of beliefs that maybe don't serve us to a new place that's ever new and full of promise. You have, Ernest Holmes said, the power to use. He said it's greater than you, again, and you can use it. You have this power. We are free to turn any life situation around to make it better. You hear me talk week by week. I'll say, you could drop that story. And what I mean by that is we might have a story that I'm not okay, or I've made mistakes, and it's too late. It's too late for me. And people carry around a lot of dejection, self-rejection. It's over, it's too late. I can remember from some of my catechism, I'm a sinner for I know full well. And you carry that with you and it's buried. And we walk around saying we're good and all of that, but there's, in most of us, things that are beneath the surface that have been beneath the surface for a long, long time. So Holmes is saying in chapter 2, we have the power. He's saying it actually in chapter 1 and 2. We have the power to use. His famous statement is, there's power for good in the universe, greater than you, of which you're a part, and you can use it. So how do you use it? How do you get yourself out of these places where your consciousness has been, I'll say, tripping you up? You don't even know it's tripping you up, because you have all this programmed stuff since the time you were a little boy or little girl. And it's only been added to in so many different ways through your school years and afterwards. And the encounters you've had, the life you have lived, has caused these beliefs to be, I'll say, added to. So how do you step out of a whole lifetime of telling yourself, I'll say, untruths? Because the truth of you is far greater than, the truth of you is that you are whole, you're complete, you're part of this divine essence. You are a point of awareness within it. You're a point of light within it. The great mystics and sages down through the centuries have proclaimed the oneness, or their oneness with spirit. They know the oneness of spirit operates through everyone. It wouldn't matter what religion you are, whoever the mystic would be. If they could imagine the other part of the world, they would know that whoever the people are that are living there are beings, divine beings full of light. They're animated by the same life-giving spirit that we all are. Many of us on this broadcast come out of a Judeo-Christian system, okay? And that would go right to the Islam, the Muslim faith as well. We come out of that system, and as we think of, say, someone like great spiritual being, someone like perhaps Jesus, his message has been around for over 2,000 years. And considering today, I think I've heard somewhere between 200 and 400 different forms of Christianity. Most of them overlook the fact that he appeared first and foremost to be a mystic. And I can give you a couple examples, just from his remarks. You've all heard them before. He said, the kingdom of God is within you, or it's at hand, right? Only a true mystic could have ever spoken these words. The kingdom is at hand, it's within you. And the demonstrations we've read about of his life and comments, one of which always, speaks to me, he says, these things that I do and greater you can do. So he was always really, he was showing you that he is the divine example of what we all can be. There's nothing, no reason in this world that you cannot have a life that's whole and complete and healthy and wonderful. There's no reason. There's no reason you can't be prosperous and abundant. There's no reason, no matter if you're going through health challenges or relationship challenges, there's no reason you can't make these situations better. So as we enter this teaching, it was told to me years ago, you're entering, it's an inner journey. And it was also described as a journey without a distance. So you don't have to go off to the latest guru, you don't have to run far, you don't have to do anything strange, you don't have to read your cards, or you don't have to do anything. The kingdom of God, or if you want to call it something else, is definitely a part of you and within you. And you have everything you could possibly need to manifest many of your dreams, many of the things that you want, you can have, but you have to learn how to do it. And chapter 1 and chapter 2 will tell you, it'll give you instruction. So let's get into some of chapter 2 of the textbook. It's entitled, by the way, in case you were new to the teaching. If you're new here, I want to welcome you. And for those of you who have been around a while, this will be a good refresher because I think there's a couple things I'm going to mention that you've probably forgotten. I know I have. So the way it works, I was glad this weekend to re-experience it. Most of us who've been in the teaching read it probably or go over it every year. Because in addition to the things that we're all familiar about in that chapter, I found that there are some things that are missed, and they're really important, and they're good. Just for everyone's information, there used to be a lot of religious science centers in the United States. And in January, many of them have closed down and are gone, but many of them in January, as custom, covered the first 4 chapters of the textbook. The first 4 chapters are brief. They lay out the foundation of our approach to the teaching, to affirmative living. So today I'll cover the key points of this brief and important chapter. It's not a long lesson today. We spoke of the first chapter a week back, and that was called The Thing Itself. And I told you when I was younger and I came into a center and I heard them talking about this God, this source is the thing. And I remember blessing myself. I think, how can they be referring to what I used to genuflect for about and bless and all that? The thing itself. It seemed to me like irreverent, I guess. But Holmes was trying to get us in the first chapter to understand the limitless power that we have at our disposal. Again, we have limitless power, but are you living your life as though you are the daughter of the realm, of the king? Are you living your life as though you are the heir to all good? Are you living your life as though you have limitless power? And I think for most people, the answer would be no, I'm not. So Holmes was emphasizing we have this power because we are one with the whole. He said we are one with the whole on the subjective side of life. Okay. So if you think about that, I have my conscious mind, you have your conscious mind. That's, the great initiator of thought, and then my subjective begins to act upon it. That would be true for all of us, right? So I want to explain a little bit more. We have this power because we are one with the whole on what he said is the subjective side of life. We might not always be consciously aware of it. In fact, I dare say most of the world is not aware of it at all. You're thinking your thoughts randomly, you're saying what you're saying, but the universe hears you. The universe picks up on your thoughts, your words, and it goes into your subjective. But the thing you may not understand or be aware of, we're connected with this one power, this thing, right? And once we discover it, it's the greatest discovery you're ever going to make. You're going to start to understand that this power is responding to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can definitely learn how to use it. So it's a great discovery to understand this power is responding to you. Because, I've dealt with, therapeutic situations for years, and people be talking endlessly about their problems and believing in the negative realities that they're experiencing. And they don't really fully appreciate that, they're recycling old ideas and stories, and you really can step out of those places if you want to, but you have to want to. A 12-step program I'm familiar with used to say, willingness is the key. And I think that applies here too. You can be on a loop with an old tape going round and round and round that somebody's done you wrong, or my life was hard, and you can think scarcity, you can think poverty, you can think, I'm not worth it. Your opinion of yourself can be very low. We have our class on Thursday night with the Hay and Holmes material, which is entirely to build you up, that whole picture that you have of yourself. When you get into our lessons, you get into Sunday, especially with these two chapters, Holmes is saying there's power, and it's not power that's distant. The power is immanent, meaning the power is within you and it operates through you, and you can definitely learn how to use it. But if you're going to do it, you got to learn how to let go of the things that are holding you back. It's not about the boyfriend, the economy, or the boss, or it's not about it's nothing. It's all about us and what we entertain and what we continually say to ourselves. Thursday nights, I'm always asking the question, what's it been like being you this week? It's only because I'm trying to get people to reflect on what that inner conversation is, because that's the conversation that it shows up, and it shows up rather quickly. And your life changes as that inner dialogue starts to change, and you have the power to change it. So each of us have come into this world at the perfect time and place to learn what we're here learning now. And that's something to think about, So you could say, okay, I was born into this world, this strange world, and I grew up in this family, and you might start to think, boy, I got like in poker, you got a hand. Well, you might think, I got a bad hand because there's a lot of stuff, I learned that's working against me. And other people, we're born into different circumstances. And all of us, we're taught things by people, right? And many of that stuff that we absorb when we're children is the very stuff that we work on as adults, or we try to work through. They call that our family of origin issues, and that's the basis of many other books and discussions and lessons. So the 4 agreements is the one that comes to mind. You have all these agreements that are passed on to you by your family, and they become yours, and you don't even realize that you're not even doing your own thinking. You're pretty much mimicking what has been taught to you until you get a little bit older and you start to question, which is great because you have the ability to think for yourself. And hopefully this teaching brings you to a point where you can say, no, I release this. This was my grandmother's stuff or my father's, and I release this. I love them, but this is not true for me. The universe is moving forward by means of all of us, and ideally, you're going to continually be changing, right? You're here to evolve and grow. So things that served you once upon a time, you will wake up and you will say, okay, well, I get it. This is what I learned. This is what I believed. But I have the ability to change my mind. You are connected with Spirit, and Spirit is always wooing you. By that I mean it's always trying to get your attention so you can consider new things. And these new thoughts, these powerful thoughts, will take root into your consciousness. And if you nurture them, they will bear fruit. So you can heal your life, things can improve. So once again, we came into life at the perfect time and place. And you came here with a certain set of lessons to learn, and they're going to be very unique to you and to me and to everyone else. This thing that Dr. Holmes speaks of, this in the first chapter, is an animating principle, okay? It's always in us, this life, and it's attempting to get our attention. It's animating. You're one with it. It's here in each one of us, whether we're able to recognize it or we're not. You might not believe in God. You might believe that there is no God. You might believe, it's a godless world. You might think life is terrible. You might think a lot of things, right? But it still remains. This animating principle is always here. It's in everyone. And it's in everyone, and it's in everyone everywhere, okay? All of life is one. Wherever you can think, I'd like you to think in Japan or Thailand or Africa or Australia or wherever you can think of people, and people are everywhere. This same life that's in you is in every single person. And it's all beautiful and it's good. And everyone that you can conceive of is living, and they're doing the best they can. They may not be praying to a Christian God. They may be in their mind feeling God is the sun, or it's the moon, or it's anything else. And it doesn't matter. This energy, this animating principle is in every single person you can think of. And everyone out there have been born into circumstances, and they're all trying to find their way, just like you. So as you think about that, why would we ever want to judge a single human being? I mean, they're all here with a certain amount of understanding. Some have far more understanding than others, but wherever people are, they have this animating principle in them, and it's trying to get their attention in the same way it tries to get your attention. We who are in religious science are really, we're so lucky, we just don't realize it. I remember Unity also, probably 40 years ago. It was Bill Cameron, Reverend Cameron used to say, we have the best kept secret of the world within us. He said, people search for this all over the world. They go on journeys, pilgrimages. They go everywhere to find the very thing that we understand in this teaching is right here in you right now. You don't have to go anywhere. You just have to bring yourself to a point where you contemplate it. And as you contemplate it and realize this God is within me, this Spirit is within me, if you contemplate that for any length of time, as you contemplate it, it raises up within you, and you develop an awareness of it. And if you have this, if you're in this teaching, you understand what we're talking about. There is this presence, this power that's unlimited, and it's in every single one of us. So we're so fortunate to know it. And how can we leave here on a Sunday and then go back griping and complaining about our lives when we learn here that the power is here? It's unlimited. It can heal anything. It can change any circumstances. And you have it. You know, you have it to use, and it responds to you. So why would you go live your life like it isn't there? When you have everything right here now. So we're more than lucky. We're more than fortunate. It's a great gift once you understand it. And I don't know that people, so I wanted to dwell on it a little bit today. You know, we say you have the power. Maybe that's not enough. You know, maybe it's better to say you are a part of it. You know, you are one with it. It responds to you. It doesn't really have a choice. So whatever it is that you really in your heart of hearts think and believe, that's what it acts upon. So what you're thinking about throughout the week, if you're going to, I'll call it the dark side or the negative side, if you live from that place where you think everyone and everything is against you, and you think that there's bad guys and you think there's bad women, if you think, and you're worrying about everything and all of that, and this is what you dwell upon, then your life is going to manifest that. And it doesn't have to be that way. So this knowledge of this power is a great gift to us. Anybody on the call, I'm going to tell you, you have the power, you have everything you need in you, operating through you. And it's a tremendous thing to realize. There's always been people in the world who have known what we're talking about. They may not have been religious scientists. There's been people who have known what we're talking about long before Ernest Holmes. They were always small in number. The masses were always in a different place. They hadn't awakened. They were looking for this connection, this God, everything in everywhere. They could be giving sacrifices to the gods. They could be worshiping the sun, the moon, and nature and everything else, right? The people who understood what the mystics understood have always been small in number. Ernest Holmes communicates some very, very important information in those brief 4 chapters. And as many times as I've read them, I know there's passages that people don't usually get. Ernest Holmes said that what we call our subjective mind is really the use we are making of the one law. See, I think I have a subjective mind. I think it's independent of everybody else. And what he's saying is, no. He says, what we call our subjective mind is really the use we are making of this one law. Each individual maintains his or her identity in it through our personal use of it. And each of us is receiving or drawing from life what we think into it. It's as simple as that, and it's as profound as that. Each of us is receiving from life what we think into it. So if you're thinking negativity, and you're thinking resentments, and you're thinking all that stuff, then you're doing it to yourself. Okay, so that's something to realize. When Louise Hay and Holmes used to say we're responsible for our lives, we are. Okay, when we're thinking negatively, we grew up with it. We believe a bunch of stuff that's, I'll say, nonsense. Alan Cohen will say our sins are self-imposed nonsense. When we hang on to that stuff and we keep thinking into it, it keeps showing up in our life. But Holmes is saying each individual maintains his or her identity in it through our personal use of it. And we're receiving and we're getting back from it what we're thinking into it. So that ought to be a clue to everybody. Like, pay attention to your thinking. There really aren't any idle thoughts. Usually at this point in most lectures or most lessons, I'll say, so it's really entirely up to us, and it is. But most of us don't know that we have this power that responds to us as profoundly as it does. And we talk about developing a greater receptivity. Many lessons I'm talking about. What are you approaching the ocean of life with? Do you have a thimble? Do you have a bucket? And Barker and others would say we need to develop bigger buckets. As we think about life, there needs to be something within us that expands so we can increase good, right? And so in the first chapter, Dr. Holmes gets into the idea once again. He said there is limitless power that we truly have. And if you study this teaching more and more, you're going to realize more and more the power that we have. It's truly limitless. For this week's lesson with the second chapter, which is entitled The Way It Works, Holmes makes a couple of what I think are brilliant statements that I'd like to talk about for just a moment. Dr. Holmes starts out by saying, this original life, this infinite life, is the essence of purity, it's the ultimate intelligence, it's power. And he said, most of all, to realize this life is within us. So original life, purity, intelligence, creative intelligence, everything is where? It's in us. Now, you might say, it's deep within us. At the center of your being, and you've heard it said so many different ways, deep in the center of your being, there's this infinite well of love, what Louise would say. Holmes is saying the same thing. This infinite life, this ultimate intelligence and power is in us. It's perfect. We are not aware of it in most cases. Sometimes we are, and then we slip out of it, we forget. And we want to nurture that understanding more, because everything that people look for when they go off to the mountains and they take the trips to everywhere and they go to whoever the guru is, you may not be aware of it, but whatever it is that you're looking for, it's within you. There was another spiritual group that I used to say go to. It's a journey without a distance. So, it's right here within you. So great is this power, so complete is this power that we have freedom in it. So we have, life is acting upon us, but right from the very beginning, we always had freedom. So what you've started to think and what you've been thinking for whatever number of years, you have freedom. You have freedom to believe life is terrible. You have freedom to believe people are terrible. Or, you can do that. Holmes was saying if we misuse this power, it brings upon us conditions from which we suffer. Now here you are, this innocent kid, and you're being bombarded with messages. Not your fault, right? You're just learning what you're learning. But if you're using what you're learning as a child and later, if we're misusing it, it brings upon us conditions from which we suffer. Many of us are bound to the beliefs. We're bound to beliefs of all kinds, and we get our beliefs from a very early stage of life. Again, the therapist in me would say that would be my family of origin issues. So there's so much that we get from the time we're children. Dr. Holmes said we suffer in this chapter. He says we suffer because of ignorance. It isn't because we're bad. There's nothing wrong with us. Each of us are whole and complete. Anyone in the world, all of the world is doing the best we can. But he said we suffer because of ignorance. So in this chapter, the way it works, what we first have to understand is that this thing, this source that we call God, works for us by working through us. And it is us. That's such a big statement. I think it goes over everybody's heads half the time. I'll say it again. So in the second chapter, the way it works, what we first have to understand is that this thing, which you call God, some of you, source, love, light, works for us by working through us. It can't give you any more than what you can conceive. If you're approaching the ocean of life with a little, like a tunnel vision, it can only give you what you can conceive. It works for you by working through you. So do you really want to open up, if it's like you're thinking of looking through some narrow little eyepiece, you want to open up your consciousness so it can can bring you greater good. Please, everyone, really pay attention to that one statement. The way it works, again, this source, this thing, it works for you by working through you. So we want to develop a bigger buckets, greater expectancy. We want to understand that there's no place in our hearts and our minds for limited thinking. We want to know that the universe is for us, and we want to know the universe is for everyone else. And we want to release the need to criticize anybody. We're here to lift up and realize that God is here. It's in me, operating through me, and it's in everyone and all the time. So try to pay attention to that one statement, because you'll miss the whole lesson if you don't start to understand that. It works for us, for the third time, I think. Works for us by working through us. So what's my capacity? I want it to enlarge so I can not be so narrow. And I'll come back to that probably another time in the lesson. So this presence, again, works for us. We have the ability to affect great change in our life. You're free to turn any situation around. I listen to people who talk to me like, I'll never forgive this person, they'll say. I just refuse. I'm not going to do it. And they'll tell me how awful the person is, or, they just go into a big story. And what Holmes is saying here is you're free to turn any situation around. Further, he and also Louise and others have said we are each responsible for our own lives. Nobody can turn your life around except for you. So we're free to turn it around. In our classes, we sometimes ask the question, well, who do you think you've come here to be? You who are heir to everything, you who have all this power, you're approaching life thinking like, I'm just this, or I'm just that. And you limit yourself by the thing, by what you imagine yourself to be. So we every week tell you that you are an individualization of this divine stuff. Okay, whatever it has, you have. Have you come into the world wanting to express more life and joy and peace and happiness? Have you come here to be excited about life? Do you want to experience happiness, bliss, calm? Do you want companionship, warmth, vitality? Do you want to be excited about your life? The secret truth you might find hard to believe at times. And the truth is you already have all these things. Again, it's at hand, but if you're not experiencing them, that means there's something like you've got blinders on. The Course in Miracles would say, the miracle's already happened. If you haven't experienced it and you're not experiencing it, it's just because you haven't yet opened your eyes or your receptivity to it. So it can't be in your life unless you develop the bigger buckets or the capacity to see it. Whatever you have longed for in life or presently longing to experience that seems to be way outside of you is an aspect of you that's really, Spirit's urging you to go forward. Let me go back to the way it works again, chapter 2, and flesh out two other points that the author makes that I think people miss most of the time when they first read it. Both of the ideas are important. Many people, when they first come into the teaching and learn about the law of attraction and they learn about affirmative living, think that they can demonstrate whatever they want. See, that's the draw. I've done these classes for many years, and when I've ever played the movie The Secret or whatever it is, people want to come and they think, okay, well, I can have the great diamond necklace, I can have the bicycle, I can have the home of my dreams, I can have whatever I want. When you come into this teaching and you get into it a little bit more deeply, you're going to hear people say, well, you have to pay for everything in spiritual coin. So it's not quite as simple as if I can believe it, I will see it. That's not exactly correct. Dr. Holmes clears all that up in chapter 2, where he says, nature or life obeys us as we first obey it. See, that's one that most people don't get. It's still not clear, so we need to read it and to dig into that idea a little bit more. There are laws in life and in science that we discover, and when we discover them and we use them, we can use them for our benefit. We must discover the law and the way of the law. As humankind has learned laws and learned to master them, we have moved forward in every conceivable way. You can think of the rockets, you can think of, anything you can think of that's been big advancements. People have discovered laws and how to use them. So going back to Dr. Holmes' statement in chapter 2, nature or life is going to obey you as you first learn to obey it. So it's not something for nothing. There are laws in life and in science that we discover, and when we discover them and use them, we can use them for great benefit. We must discover the law and the way of the law. As humankind has learned laws and mastered them, society has moved forward, with warp speed. This is the same as we align ourselves with spiritual laws. As we learn to obey the laws of life, it's like when you're obeying the laws of life, it's like you're swimming in the same direction with life. When we're resisting them, what do we experience? It's painful. In our classes, we try to observe and contemplate the attributes of what we call source. We do so we can begin to align ourselves with some of them. Reverend Judith is here, and if Joyce were around, she would remind me. But the ones that come to mind always, for me, are peace, power, love, joy, beauty, wisdom. Any other? Okay. Yeah, I think. So here it is. In our classes, we try to observe and contemplate the attributes of sources, best we can imagine them, right? So we do that. We contemplate them so we can begin to align ourselves with them. There's 7. The ones I remember today are peace, power, love, joy, beauty, wisdom. There's another. It could be health, wholeness. You can add others. And light. So as we contemplate these internal attributes of source, and you said to yourself, and I'm one with this, okay? I'm one with God. So these are attributes of mine. As we contemplate these internal attributes of source, we start to think and understand that whatever this source is, whatever it is, we are one with it. And the attributes we just mentioned again, peace, power, love, joy, light, wisdom, health, wholeness, as we bring them into our being and we understand the attributes of source are also our attributes. Now, you might not think of yourself as being loving, joyful, full of wisdom and light, but the fact of the matter is you are. You might have all that stuff hidden pretty well, but you are one with spirit, and these are your attributes as well. So we can think of source as being loving and giving and wise and knowledgeable, whole, beautiful, and so much more. And then we can go back to what Dr. Holmes was saying and how it works. He said we align ourselves with these ideas. I would always think of Benjamin Franklin because he would say, assume a virtue if you have it not. And that came out of, his, I'll call it self-help book. So if you're finding yourself not acting like you're loving or not experiencing joy and beauty, you want to align yourself with these ideas, right? And you want to proclaim the health that you have, and you want to celebrate them within you. So when we contemplate these internal attributes, these are attributes of source itself, we start to think and understand that whatever this source is, whatever it is, we are one with it and these attributes. Its attributes belong to us and are part of us. So we can think of it as being loving and giving and wise and knowledgeable, beautiful, whole, and so much more. And then we go back to what Holmes is saying and how it works. He said, we align ourselves with these, and he says, then nature or life obeys us. So that's the part of it. You want to align yourself with spirit and the attributes of spirit. And as you do that, he says, nature or life will obey us as we obey it. And we start to live in alignment with these principles, these laws. So you can't expect to be demonstrating, great relationships and prosperity and abundant living and all that other stuff if you're living your life out of alignment with these ideas, because you're working against yourself. When I say I am one with the one, it's very true. And for that to show up everywhere in my life, and it will, my practice, our practice, is living in alignment with these attributes. As we learn to live what I call the affirmative life, we day by day, and sometimes hour by hour, learn to be more loving. We become more confident. We learn to see ourselves as whole and complete. Further, we begin to see other people as whole and complete. We're not here to take them apart. Wherever they are, however they're showing up, we see them as whole and complete, and they're evolving in light as we are too. We begin to believe there's a divine pattern of health within each and every one of us, and we begin to understand that there is intelligence in us, and there's intelligence in the world. No matter how chaotic it is or whatever is being told to you on the news, we understand that there's a perfect pattern that's unfolding in life and in everyone in life. So it's in us and it's in the world and it's unfolding all the time. This is our salvation, if you think about it. We are awakening in this teaching to know all is truly well, and we're releasing the need to talk negatively about ourselves, about others, about the world, or anything else. This is what a practitioner is. They're refusing to go to that other place. Because as we go there, we put ourselves in separation, we start believing duality, and it isn't the direction most of us want to go. Once again, powerfully, and usually people miss it, nature or life obeys us as we first learn to obey it. It took me a lot of years to find and understand this, and I'm hoping all of you contemplate it, because you can read through that chapter and you'll miss it entirely, because it's embedded in another idea he's talking about. I've taught a lot of students. I remember especially when I was doing classes around the movie The Secret and the Law of Attraction, and that's the missing piece. It really is. Nature will obey you once you learn to obey it. Then when you do that, your wish is truly your command. Dr. Holmes says, how much can I demonstrate? In this chapter, right? And he answers, he says, exactly what you believe. You can demonstrate exactly what you believe. And then he adds, you can and you will demonstrate whatever is in your consciousness that's not repudiated or rejected by your own denials. So look, the sky's the limit. In fact, there is no limit. You can demonstrate whatever is in your consciousness, as long as you don't go and say, oh, well, this won't work. I remember we had a discussion some weeks ago, and we're talking about planting the perfect seed in the perfect soil, and I think we were talking with Kat, and she's out there in the farming land. When you're planting these positive ideas, these seeds that we talk about in the perfect garden, stop digging them up with thoughts of fear or doubt. Because when Holmes is saying you can and will demonstrate whatever's in your consciousness, you're going to demonstrate what's in your consciousness. That conversation you're having all week long, it will play out unless you so you might be working yourself and saying, look, I'm whole, I'm complete, I love myself, I love, accept, and approve of myself. And that's going to be the kind of thing that's going to draw experiences and people to you, unless you go in there and say, oh no, I'm really not worthy, I'm really a piece of whatever. If you let that negative dialogue overtake it, then you're going to, as Holmes said, you're going to be rejecting your own positive statements. So keep planting the seeds of positivity all the time. Stop digging them up with doubts and fears, and let them come forth into your life. There's another important point that's often overlooked in the way it works. When Dr. Holmes is talking about how the good can only work for us by working through us. That's a really important thing to understand also, and something I talk about all the time, and I will some more. On the same page, he mentions that there is only one energy, one power, one source, and he strongly emphasizes that there is only good and only God, and he says there's only good, there's only God, and if you want nothing else, you're going to start to demonstrate that. It takes a while to understand this because, you just listen to people. They don't talk about life as being good all the time. They don't talk about everyone is, this person is evolving, this person's doing well. If you're a lifter, you're training yourself to see the good in everybody. So Holmes is mentioning that there's only one energy, one power. There's not two. There's one, right? I hear people talking about bad energy, bad this, bad that, but that's not true. There's only this animating principle that's in everyone. And it takes a while for people to start to get this. Because if you do, then you have tremendous compassion for other people, no matter what they're doing. Because you understand they're doing the best that they can, and they're moving forward, sometimes painfully slow, but they're moving forward. So we keep practicing knowing that there is this one power, one source in operation, no matter what it looks like. There is God in this. There is love in this. There is intelligence in this. Dr. Holmes said we got to get to this concept. We must get this rather than thinking there's a power of evil and all that goes with that idea. Holmes says there is only source. We wrongly perceive, he said, it's wrong. We wrongly perceive good and evil because we are perceiving duality rather than unity. So when you find yourself tripping out there talking about people, places, and things and characterizing them as being bad and awful, think back on what he says in chapter 2. Review it for yourself. He said there's one source. It's in everybody. It's evolving in everyone. And we wrongly perceive good and evil because we are perceiving ourselves duality rather than unity. So again, here we practice there's one life, and that life is in all of us. We're not talking about two lives. We're not talking about two powers. We're talking about one power. I'd refer anybody to the poem, Please Call Me By My True Names. Many of you know it's one of my favorites, by Thich Nhat Hanh. Because in that poem, he describes a whole scenario where there's all kinds of activity going on, and you'll be led to see in that poem that there is this creative intelligence, this love that's operating throughout all these different scenarios. And you wouldn't think it's love, but if you read this breathtaking poem, you'll understand, God is in everything. This source, this God, is all that there is, even when it looks unholy. We are here, there we are in every circumstance. There we are all in this place of unfolding, where we are unfolding in light and in love, and we're doing the best we can with what we know. And that's true of everyone. So we don't want to judge creation. We observe, and the mystic, the practitioner, is going to say, there is good in this. I don't really see it right now, but I know that there's good in this. People are often in different places of understanding, so you can watch it. And I usually suggest don't turn on the news, but turn it on, you'll hear the craziness that's going on. People are in different places all the time. I know that we live a very brief life, and you have choices to make. And you can live your life seeing the good and understanding the good and communing with the good, and that can be your reality. Or you can just go out there and keep reacting to everything that people will present to you. If you have discovered this teaching, I want to say congratulations. it's really an exciting thing. I discovered it early, and it's changed my life. I mean, really, this teaching is salvation, because you can begin to realize, oh my goodness, it's here, and it's here operating in me, and it's responding to me. This kingdom, or whatever you want to call it, is at hand. It really is at hand, and it responds to me. I just need to keep looking to the good and seeing that good in people and seeing it in myself. That's the spiritual work we do. Living in that connection, I'm connected with this good, this power. And that's what a mystic understands, that there is good, there is God. That's all they understand. And that source is there, and life is responding to us all the time according to our beliefs. Logically, then I want to adjust and align myself with the givingness of life and the qualities of life. You know, the ideas that we spoke of like twice already. I want to adjust myself to be more peaceful, more loving. I want to be more confident. I want to see beauty and understand that there's wisdom, and I want to be able to trust it, and I want to fill my consciousness with life-giving thoughts and affirmations. Because I know if I do, that's going to open up avenues in mind, and I will demonstrate that's everywhere. If I keep focused on the problems and who's working against me and what's wrong and what's awful, then you know what I'm creating. If I'm living in fear all the time, the sky is falling, then you know what my life is going to be like. There is a source, we learn in chapter 2, a higher power, and there is nothing else. Again, there is a source permeating life everywhere. You call it what you will. There is this source, and there is nothing else. And it exists, and it responds to us. And I've already mentioned it, but the last thing Holmes mentions in this brief chapter is worth repeating. This thing, this source, can work for us only through us. Again, this is a powerful concept. We don't want limited thinking anymore. We want our consciousness to expand and to be larger. Let every one of us today be willing to accept more good than we ever have before at any time. Let that be my affirmation every day, that I'm going to accept more good now than I have at any time before. And say to yourself, I deserve this, I absolutely deserve this. And as you do this, you're going to open up a floodgate of good in your world. Do your best to stay connected with yourself. That's the question I got in a therapy group for years. Are you coming from connection? Are you coming from connection? Are you coming from connection? If I'm coming from connection, I'm coming from a place of remembering who I am. And if I'm remembering who I am, I promise you, then I'm going to remember who you are. But if I'm all caught up in the weeds and I'm thinking something's wrong with me, then there's going to be something wrong with you and something wrong with everybody else, and I'm lost in space. You know, so what we do here when we find that we're lost, we lovingly and gently bring ourselves back, and we start again. We start a new day. We start our day over. So please, keep working it. Stay connected with yourself. If you find yourself going into judgment or duality, simply stop. Lovingly stop. Start your day over. Dr. Holmes warmly states, as he wraps up the chapter, that the time will come when we will let all this apparent evil behind us. He says, like old writings or old scrolls and of things that people once thought to be true. So please don't be tripping out about the negative stuff, because I promise you in the end you're going to let go of it all. So he ended the chapter on a positive note. He asked us to dream and said you can dream and make your mark. And he says, go as high as you can in your dreams. It's like the Emerson, hit your wagon to the stars, right? So go to the place, bring yourself to the highest place you can, because you will demonstrate from that place in the material world. There's absolutely no limit to what you can achieve, no limit to thought. You'll go as high as you can dream. So there's no limit to what you can experience and the love you can feel and experience in your life. So that ends the way it works.